In this episode of The Atomic Zone, our opening narration introduces you to an ordinary man, a middle-aged software developer, the kind of man you would never notice twice, rising quietly in the early dark before the rest of his family wakes, careful not to disturb anyone as he sleeps not in his own bed but on a couch in the TV room, a quiet, self-imposed exile that already tells you more than he ever would. He moves through his morning with practiced silence, dressing, making coffee, stepping out into the cold air, and walking toward the bus stop while the world still feels half asleep, and the narration reminds you that nothing about this man is unusual, except for one thing that never leaves him. Because as he walks, as he rides, as he works, there is a thought. No, not even a thought, more like a pressure, something just beyond comprehension, something that insists relentlessly that something is not right. At work, he is competent, invisible, dependable, moving through Jira tasks, code reviews, and stand-up meetings with the same quiet efficiency as anyone else, nodding at the appropriate times, typing at the appropriate pace, occasionally smiling at the appropriate joke, while inside something much louder is happening, because he cannot stop thinking about it. He reflects, not dramatically but persistently, on how impossibly perfect everything is, not perfect in the sense of happiness or fairness, but perfect in construction, in balance, in the quiet, terrifying sense that everything fits together just a little too well. He considers how every person is locked inside a body, able to feel everything, yet able to control almost nothing, each one on their own isolated journey, separated by invisible walls of perception, all of them searching for something they cannot even fully describe. On the bus, he stares out the window and wonders how the universe could allow consciousness at all, how billions of years of cosmic evolution could converge into a single moment where he exists now, not earlier, not later, just here, as if arriving at the end of a story he never saw begin. At his desk, he tries to focus on code, but his mind drifts to the idea that the universe itself is nothing more than a question mark, vast and silent, offering no answers, only deeper and more refined versions of the same question. He briefly entertains simulation theory, the zoo hypothesis, the idea that reality itself might be a construct, a test, or a performance, but each possibility dissolves the moment he tries to hold on to it, slipping away like something seen only in peripheral vision. He reminds himself of Plato's cave, that perhaps he is watching shadows on a wall, and that the truth exists, just out of reach, but he also knows that even if he escaped, no one would believe him, and he might not even believe himself. He thinks of Descartes, that he can only know that he thinks and therefore exists, and yet even that certainty feels hollow, like a single brick floating in an infinite void of doubt. During a meeting, while someone explains a feature request he barely hears, he considers Camus, imagining Sisyphus pushing his boulder endlessly, and wonders if the only dignity available is to accept the absurdity and continue anyway. He remembers Epictetus, that it is not things that disturb us but our opinions about them, and briefly wonders if he could simply choose not to be disturbed. But the thought fades before it can take root. He types, he clicks, he commits code, while Marcus Aurelius whispers in his memory that he has power over his mind but not over events, and he wonders what good that power is inside a system he does not understand. Time passes, unnoticed and relentless, and he reflects on how it only moves forward, allowing just enough memory to regret the past, and just enough imagination to fear the future, but never enough clarity to escape the present. He thinks about death, about Epicurus insisting it is nothing to us, and yet feels the quiet contradiction that knowing this changes nothing about the weight it carries. On the ride home, he stares at his reflection in the window and considers whether consciousness itself might be a mistake, as Zapfi suggested, a surplus awareness that should never have evolved, and yet here it is, asking questions it cannot answer. The narration lingers on this, that every philosopher, every thinker, every attempt at meaning has led back to the same quiet conclusion that the search itself is the only meaning, and even that will eventually end. And through all of it he remains calm, functional, normal. He gets off the bus after dark, walking back toward his home, and as he approaches, we notice something small but persistent. The porch light is off. Of course it is. He pauses before the door, just for a moment, taking a breath, and the narration slows, because something new is happening now, something different from the abstract. A thought begins to form. People shouldn't live like this. No one should hesitate before walking into their own home. He wonders quietly if this could be it, if this could be the source of that constant unease, not the universe, not existence, but something simpler, something closer. He opens the door. Inside, the television is on, casting a dull, flickering light across the room, but there is no greeting, no movement, just the low hum of something that feels almost like life. He sets his things down, moving into the kitchen, making casual, one-sided conversation, calling out to his wife, asking about her day, speaking in the tone of someone who expects an answer and receives none. He pauses. This is it, he realizes. This is the feeling. This is what it is. He finishes preparing dinner, methodically, almost ceremonially, placing food onto plates, arranging everything just so, and carrying it into the dining room. And then, almost absent-mindedly, he announces it. Chicken and rice. Everything nice. He stops, repeats it softly to himself. Chicken and rice. Everything nice. Again. Chicken and rice. Everything nice. Something shifts. Something clicks into place with a sudden, unexpected clarity. And then, for the first time in the entire episode, he bursts with genuine excitement. I know what it is. I figured it out. And now, finally, we see his family. Not a family in any ordinary sense, but a grotesque assembly of stitched-together bodies, mismatched limbs and faces, crudely assembled into the shapes of a suburban household, dressed in familiar clothes that no longer belong to anything truly human. A housewife figure, barely held together, teenagers in uniforms that no longer fit the bodies inside them, something unrecognizable in a high chair, all of them motionless, all of them watching. He sits down among them, smiling, radiant, completely at peace, and he explains with absolute certainty that the answers are not possible, that they never were, that the universe was never meant to be understood. He explains that the search itself is a trap, a beautiful, endless loop that can never resolve. And then, with childlike joy, he declares the only truth he has found, that happiness is choosing to delight in the smallest things, like a rhyme, like chicken and rice, everything nice. He laughs softly, repeating it again, savoring it, as if this simple phrase has done what philosophy never could. Across the table, the stitched-together wife leans forward slightly, her voice barely functioning, and she croaks, with immense effort, two simple words. Kill me. He smiles, leans in gently, kisses her, and reassures her warmly, sincerely, as if nothing at all is wrong. That life is beautiful. And so is she. The closing narration reminds you that in a universe filled with impossible questions, unknowable truths, and infinite uncertainty, some people will search forever. And others will find their answer, even if that answer is madness, or perhaps especially if it is. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of understanding, in a quiet house with the porch light on, he sets the plates down one by one, careful, deliberate, like a man who believes routine itself has meaning, and seated around the table, a family that almost passes for ordinary at a glance. His wife sits at the head of the table, her posture stiff but composed, her face a careful assembly of mismatched features, one eye slightly lower than the other, her lips pulled tight where the stitching crosses her cheek, her hair styled in that familiar 1950s curl as if someone had tried very hard to make her presentable. Across from her a teenage boy slouches, his athletic jacket draped over shoulders that don't quite match, his fingers tapping idly against the table, each movement just a fraction out of sync, as if he's remembering how to be alive instead of actually being so. Next to him a teenage girl sits too upright, her cheer uniform immaculate, her smile fixed just a second too long whenever she remembers to use it, her hands folded neatly despite the faint discoloration that creeps up from beneath her sleeves. And at the far end, in a high chair that creaks softly, something small and wrong shifts ever so slightly, wrapped in a blanket that tries, and fails, to hide what should never be seen. The man sits down with them, smiling warmly, as though nothing about this moment is unusual. So, he says, picking up his fork, what did everyone do today? There is a pause, the kind that might feel normal in another home, the kind where people are deciding who speaks first, except here it lingers just a little too long. The boy finally answers, his voice dry, a little hollow, like air passing through something that doesn't quite function anymore. I went to school, he says, staring down at his plate. Talked to that girl I like. He pauses, as if searching for the feeling that should follow that statement, then adds, almost mechanically, she smiled at me. The man nods, pleased, genuinely pleased, leaning forward slightly. That's great. That's really great. And for just a moment, you get the sense that the boy wants to feel something about that somewhere inside whatever remains of him, there is the faint echo of what that used to mean. The girl turns her head next, her smile appearing a beat too late, her voice soft but oddly precise. I had practice, she says. We're preparing for regionals. She tilts her head, her expression thoughtful in a way that feels rehearsed. I think I did well. Then, after a moment, she adds, as if remembering something important. The coach said I was spirited. Her smile widens slightly at that word, lingering there, uncertain, like she's waiting for it to become real. That's my girl, the man says, beaming, and there's no irony in it, no hesitation, just pure, uncomplicated pride. His wife shifts slightly, the movement subtle but strained, as if the act of participating requires effort that no longer comes naturally, Her voice, when it arrives, is rough at the edges, stitched together just like everything else. "I did the laundry," she says, her tone calm, domestic, practiced, "paid the insurance, and, the usual. Cleaned the bathrooms, defrosted the fridge, made the doctor's appointments for the kids. Everything ordinary. Nothing special for me. Same day, same work." He glances around the table, his eyes soft, content, as if this exact moment, is everything he's been trying to understand all day. And in a quiet, almost imperceptible way, each of them reflects something different back at him. The boy, a hollow curiosity, like he's aware of a world he can no longer fully participate in. The girl, a fragile imitation of joy, holding on to the shape of happiness without quite grasping its substance. The wife, a distant, flickering awareness, as if she understands more than she can express, or perhaps more than she wants to. And the child, something else entirely. But the man doesn't see any of that. He sees a family. He smiles again, wider this time, and reaches for another bite, perfectly at ease, perfectly at home, in a moment that feels to him exactly right.